Life is unsympathetic. Life is relentless in its pursuit. Right now, it's ravaging people's lives. It's bringing chaos. Life can also be forgiving, but right now we're in the midst of a pandemic, and life is not going to go on hold. It does not give a time out. It's not going to say, listen, because you have kids, because you still have to go to school, we're going to make some time for it. Life does not give you that opportunity. In fact, right now, you'll have to deal with the pandemic. At the same time, you have to raise kids. At the same time, you have to worry about what you're eating this evening. You have to worry about where your kids are going to go to college. You have to go and write them in. Right now, life is not going to be put on hold because you have relational problems. Life is not going to be put on hold. It's not going to take a time out because you don't have finances. In fact, it's going to ravage you. It's going to continue pounding upon you, that you may understand that it's not going to give you a time out. And we know, unfortunately, our systems are so constructed that many times people are taken out. Life has to be put on hold so that they can first sort out their problems. Life does not work like that. In practice, it's not like that. We got to understand there is no time out because you're dealing with a pandemic. At the same time, as I mentioned, you've got to raise kids, you've got to pay bills, you've got to study, you've got to deal with marital problems, you've got to deal with addictions, you've got to deal with kids with addictions, you've got to deal with the husbands that's sleeping around. So life, just because there's a pandemic and you've got issues, is not going to go on hold. So as we're going to turn to the scriptures, I want to encourage you to come and just take a walk with me through the scriptures, just being encouraged. And many times people do not have direction because they're thinking about one thing while there's another option. And I just want you to come with me, just take the step with me so that there can just be a little more direction. And right now with the pandemic, people got to ask themselves the question, this pandemic, is it 666? Is it the beginning of the end? Is it really there? Or is it just another bump in the road? In other words, we've had we've had plagues, we've had pandemics and stuff like that. Is it just something that is happening because of man's disobedience, because men complicate stuff, because men want to be in power, but it's not the first time? So we got to sort this thing out, because once you sort it out, you will then know what to do next. Because if it's the last of the last days, then obviously there's some priorities that you got to set, that you got to understand what is next that I got to do. But if it is not that, it's just a bump into the road, then you still got to understand certain things that you got to do. But at the same time, we're not just going to want to take out fire insurance. In other words, the Lord is coming, I got to make things right. Yes, you've got to always be ready to go. But at the same time, when we understand there's still a phase, there's still some stuff that needs to happen, then it immediately brings some reliefs and also orientation. It gives us direction, because then we know it's not the end of the end. It's not the last of the last. We understand that, listen, this is a bump in the road and we can still make a way. We can still make hay while the sun shines. There's still some stuff that we need to do. But even in the midst of this pandemic, you still got to start that business. You still got to start that ministry. You can't now go and sit and wait for the Lord. You can't become idle. So my encouragement this morning, and I want to start first of all with the word that the Lord gave me. He said that you've got to discern, or right now, you've got to choose between time and your goal. At the same time, what is the difference between the two? The difference between goal-orientated and time-orientated at this point, and this is a word that is going to help many people out there. If we are time-orientated, then we understand that our goals, from the position and the orientation of time, we are then going to calculate and see if something is viable because of the time. Because of the time, we're going to see we might not have enough time. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be this or that. And therefore, we will quit before we even start. But when we understand that it's goal-orientated, then even though we understand that it's going to take some time because we are orientated about the goal. Time is not so much going to be the issue, because even though it's going to take long, if we look at just what the pandemic did right now, we planned an awareness campaign for the marketplace ministry, and this thing was just shot out of the water, and it has been delayed. But at the same time, goal-orientated means that, listen, we're just going to shift it. But if it was time-orientated, we'd say, it's not going to happen, it's too difficult right now, and so on. So you've got to make up your mind right now not to focus on the time it's going to take. Yes, it's important, but it's not the first importance. You've got to understand that goal orientation is the big thing. This is the priority. So the Lord is not going to just give you all of the information. There's going to be breadcrumbs. There's going to be bait. He's going to bait people into ministry. He's going to bait people into certain projects and assignments, because He knows that if He gives you the whole picture, you're going to look at the amount of time that is going to take, the setbacks, the delays, and even the difficulties, and you're going to quit before you actually start. While it is something that the Lord wants you to do, but you're going to look at the difficulty and not do it. So now He's going to bait you. And by baiting, He's just going to give enough to bring the interest, to cause some interest. And once you're in it, He's going to step by step open up the things, because now you're already in it. And now you're going to go the distance, because you understand that it is goal orientation, not time. So now all the delays and all the other things are factored in. So you build perseverance and endurance. And I just want to make this distinction again between perseverance and endurance. Endurance is the ability to bear up under a load, while perseverance is actually moving forward. So endurance means you're carrying the load, while perseverance means you are moving forward. So the two go hand in hand, because the one gives you the ability to bear up or to carry that thing, while perseverance is saying we are moving forward with this load. So you've got to understand that you need to be goal orientated. If you are, you're going to factor in that delays are going to be there. And sometimes it's going to be difficult, but you know that it's the goal at the end of the day and not the time. So if you're busy with something right now and you thought it was going to take 3 months, if you were time orientated, you'd probably give up by now if nothing happened. But at the same time, if you're goal orientated, even though it took 3 months and it's more than 3 months, it's 6 months now, because you are goal orientated, and this is a word that you've got to understand, you've got to keep it in mind, because everything is being set back, everything have delays now and complication, and there's objects and stuff like obstacles. So if you're goal orientated, the time doesn't really matter, although it can become inconvenient. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you're going to push through to get to the end. So the Lord is baiting us into this thing. Otherwise, we are going to quit before we even start, because we are so focused on the time that we want to quit because we think it's not going to happen. So don't give up. You got to continue, got to push through. The Lord is not here yet. So you've got to still do what you need to do. You can't sit idle now and wait for the Lord. In fact, the Lord takes that so seriously. In the book of Acts, when the Lord was taken up into the clouds and He disappeared, these guys were staring into heaven, waiting for the Lord and to see what's happening, that the Lord sent not only one, but 2 angels back to tell them, why are you staring into this place? In fact, it is a dangerous place to be, to keep staring into the air, waiting for the Lord. He says the Lord is going to come back the same way He went. But it's a dangerous place to be staring in the air. He actually sends 2 angels to remind them, listen, you got some work to do. So we've got work to do. Bringing in the harvest, working in the marketplace. There's marketplace ministry. We've got to do the things that the Lord has placed on our heart. We can't now want to stay in the air. We must carry on in such a way as if the Lord is never coming back. But we must hold so lightly to the things that we have achieved and accomplished that when He does, we say, bye-bye world. So this is another mindset that we have. We can't wait into all eternity and become ineffective and unproductive. We got to produce as if he's never going to come, but hold so lightly to the stuff that when he does come, we let go. You know, in Genesis 8:22, it says, as long as the earth endures, and there's seed time and there's harvest time. He is saying that, listen, if everything's not gone yet, if everything has not been rolled up, there is opportunity to fulfill your mission, to fulfill what God has called you to do. You don't back down. If God has called you to be in business and He's called you for the marketplace ministry, you got to release that gifts in those areas. We see right now what the justice is doing. He is standing in the gap. He is presenting that resistance. If we could just have more men of God standing in the different positions with regard to kingdom ministry, understanding their calling, they got to be like a Daniel that gives direction. It doesn't matter even if he was second in charge. He was not the king, but his influence affected the whole land. So we've got to understand that as Paul comes, and this is the word that I also want to leave with you, keep your head in all things. Keep your head in all situations. And Paul reads and Paul speaks to Timothy and he says, but be self-controlled. That's the first word. And another, it says, be clear-minded. In another, it says, be watched thou in all things. And in another one, he says there, keep your head in all situations. So what are we saying here? Paul is saying that, listen, Timothy, as long as you're busy with your work, you've got to still, because there are other things, there are other dynamics in life that affects you. There are other dynamics in life that influences you. And now he's telling the man, keep your head in all of these things. In other words, he's got to preach. He's got to do this work of the evangelist, as Paul is encouraging him. But while he's got to contend with the fact that he's young. Many of us are being disrespected because we're young. Many of us feel that we can't carry on because there's no finances, although we are busy with what we're supposed to be doing. So he's telling us, keep your head in all of this. Despite what's happening around you, despite the pandemic, there's some stuff that you got to finish. You got to keep your head in this situation. And we've got to understand that everybody's contending in their own little world with situations. And as we are contending, you know, when each person, as they have this, I call it the colliding of two worlds. And an example is, while a child is playing with his ball in the yard, and the street is just next to it, and there's a car coming on, this kid is in his own world. He's contending with his world. He's playing with the ball, and the ball rolls into the street. That kid is oblivious to everything else around him. And he runs after that ball because he does not know about the driver coming here, speeding 120. And the driver in the car, in his world, he's late. He's got to get somewhere. He's not aware of the child. He's not aware what's going to happen. And because he's ignorant of the bigger picture, he speeds up even more. And this child, also ignorant and oblivious to what's going to happen, runs after the ball. And what happens? What's the result? The impending result is that the kid runs into the street. This guy cannot apply brakes in time, and the two worlds collide, and there's devastation, there's trauma. It's a tragedy that happens. So when we are not aware of the bigger picture, and we are just in our own little world, running after our own little thing, whether the driver or the baby, we can still understand when it's a child. But an adult, those who are mature, need to be aware of bigger things, need to be aware of the bigger picture. This guy speeding knows it's in a residential area and has to be aware of the bigger picture. And because he is not, he kills somebody's baby. And many times in ministry, in business, we are so focused just on the dream and not and our little world and what we want. that we are oblivious to the rest of the world and the bigger picture. And we cause accidents, we cause premature death of babies, of goals, of plans, of purposes, of callings, because we are ignorant of this stuff. And therefore Paul tells Timothy, listen, keep your head in all situations. He's saying, listen, be aware of all these things. Don't let them influence you negatively, but be aware so that you are able to make the decisions at the right time, before the time, so that you can prevent chaos, prevent damage, prevent devastation. So we've got to be aware of this. We've got to understand. So Paul is saying, listen, even though I'm being poured out as a drink, and these other guys who want somebody that will speak to them, that is, making them feel okay. He says, you keep your head. In other words, you'll always have the people that are just around you. They want you to just please them. They want you to just go along with them. But you've got to keep your head. You've got to understand what the Lord has called you for. You've got to understand, listen, this might just be a bump in the road and not the last of the last days. If you sort that out, I can guarantee you will know what your next step is.